Hello, my name is Seth, and I am a Cenote addict. Now, if you've been to a cenote before, you understand the obsession. If you haven't, let me fill you in real quickly. The cenotes are a series of flooded cave and cavern systems that run underneath the Yucatan Peninsula. Every once in a while, a sinkhole caves in and you have access to the system, creating a cavern zone that you can snorkel or scuba in. Now, I just got back from a dive trip to Mexico, and my friends and family, well, they were getting a little bit concerned. Because you see, I'd booked an oceanfront hotel, and despite being steps away from the beach, when they called to check in on me, I'd have to admit, I actually hadn't been to the beach yet. I'd been taking a 4x4 truck and going into the jungle to dive these caverns and cave systems. See, the problem is, it's hard to put the draw of the cenotes into words. And the other thing is that each and every cenote is unique, and so it's hard to explain them individually. What I really wanted to do with this video was see if I could find a way to distill the essence of cenote diving that I experienced in my trip into a couple of key elements that all of you at home could understand. I think I was somewhat successful, and I came up with 4 elements that I think that most cenotes have in common. The 4 elements that I came up with are water, light, stone, and jungle. I hope you'll stick around and see what I'm talking about on this episode of Submerged Stories. Our first element is water. Cenotes are known for their beautiful water. The unlimited visibility really gives you a sense of the scale and the depth of these sites, and it creates a crystal clear canvas to film the beautiful formations and cave structures on. But with most dive sites, the water is just a vehicle you need to travel with to see the actual site itself, be that a reef, a wreck, or an animal. Cenotes, I think, are fairly unique in that the water itself can be a powerful draw. Now in this clip, what I want you to take a look at is the light refractant on the back of those rocks. You can see as the diver moves his light up and down, you almost see different layers of light in the water. What this is a visual representation of something called a halocline. We are actually seeing where 2 different bodies of water meet. There's a layer of fresh water and a layer of salt water. The salt water has more minerals in it, so it's denser and lays on the bottom, creating those striations. What's interesting is that although it's clear when it's undisturbed, when the diver moves through it, you can see him mixing up the water. It creates this kind of fuzzy, hazy, halo-like effect. I actually think it's very cool. He almost looks like a superhero of sorts with his cape or halo around him. Now this clip is probably my favorite. It's subtle, so stick with it, but you can really see the rippling of that layer of salt water. We're on the freshwater layer looking downwards. And you can see the divers below me. Well, the water is all blurry because they are below the 2 different layers of water. And here you can see me really dropping down between those layers. It gets fuzzy as we reach the meeting point of the salt and the freshwater. But once we pop below the halocline, we're in just salt water, and you can see that diver in the bottom right comes right into focus. Then back up above the halocline, blurry for just a moment, but then from up top, you can really see how we're basically looking at almost a lake within a lake, an underwater lake of salt water. All of this halocline talk too subtle for you? Well, what do you make of this? Is it an island floating in the clouds? Well, not quite. What this is a dive site called Cenote Angelita. We're looking at, quite literally, an underwater lake and an underwater island. The clouds, quote unquote, are in fact layers of hydrogen sulfide formed by decaying plant matter. The cenote is basically an open pit, and so the plants fall in, decay, and being denser, sink to the bottom. Divers can sink to the bottom as well. The overall effect is very, very cool, and also, let's face it, just a little bit creepy as well. This is one of the most unique and interesting cenotes. While other cenotes do have hydrogen sulfide layers, this is probably the largest concentration of hydrogen sulfide of any cenote dive. Not only is it interesting and cool and a little bit creepy in a fun way, but it really drives home the point. The water itself and the differences within a body of water itself can really be quite beautiful. The second element is light. Light is, of course, closely related to water. You can't get these beautiful light rays without crystal clear water. They're also a function of most cenotes that we do recreationally being in what's called the cavern zone. You get this beautiful interplay of light coming in over the cliff edge. I think these light rays are so gorgeous and basically speak for themselves, so I don't have much to say in this segment. I'll jump back in here to mention that there's more than just these light beams though. For instance, what about all those air bubbles? When we're in an overhead environment, they get trapped, and I think they can create quite an interesting interplay with the light. And sometimes when you get them just right and just still enough, they can create a mirror-like surface sitting on the roof of the cave. And then sometimes it's also about the silhouette. You can get these really nice, dark, and rich, deep blues that come in as we go further into the cave zone and further away from the cavern zone. Stone. Well, I've kept you waiting long enough. Somehow we've made it halfway through a video about caves, and I've only just begun to mention the rocks. There are some absolutely incredible stone formations in these cenotes. Below me are these fascinating stalagmites, many of which look like stone melting away in place. And if we keep looking closely, we can find lots of interesting features embedded in these rocks, like these ancient skeletons from long-dead marine creatures, or these crystallizing structures that remind me of gemstones. But if you think looking down is cool, well, looking up will really take your breath away. These are stalactites, and what's going on here is water is seeping through the ground above the caves. It's slowly leaching out some of the limestone that makes up the structure of these caves, creating a mineral slushy that then drips from the surface of the caves. And slowly, very slowly, these constant limestone drips dry in place and create stalactites. You know, it's sort of the same process by which an icicle would form on a cold day. But let's stop and think about it. Because if I just said water had to be dripping, well, the caves couldn't have been underwater. At some point they had to be dry when the formations were created, and they only flooded more recently. In fact, this is exactly what scientists believe happened. They think that during the last ice age, sea levels in the Yucatan were 300 feet or more below where they are today. And evidence suggests that these cenotes only flooded, somewhere between 8 and 13,000 years ago. Let's think about that. That means that at the very youngest, these formations are over 8,000 years old because they stopped growing when these caves flooded. And stalactites don't grow fast. It can take a stalactite 300 years or more to grow a single inch. So for a foot-long stalactite, that means that we're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 years of growth. And for a monster like this one, we could easily be looking at 20,000 years or more of growth. Basically, picture that leaky faucet in your bathroom, keeping you up at night, dripping for 10,000 years. The youngest of these formations is a spry 9,000 years old, formed just before the Ice Age ended. But one study I read dated some of these formations to be over 400,000 years old. To put that number in context, Homo sapiens as a species is only thought to be 200,000 to 300,000 years old. If I really had to sum it up, what I would say is that these cenote formations we're looking at are pieces of natural artwork created on a scale beyond human understanding. Jungle. This fourth and final element of the cenotes is unique. Whereas all the others focused on some feature of the cave or cavern itself, this one is all about how the cenotes fit into the larger Yucatan ecosystem. It's a pretty mind-blowing thought. All of this diving has been taking place literally underneath a rainforest. This fact is never more clear than when you pop up in an air bubble underneath the jungle. And look, we even have a distinctly non-aquatic visitor, a bat. And when you lie on your back and look up, you see where he flew in, that hole in the surface that shines up into the rainforest. But while that air pocket was only accessible via scuba diving, the fact is that people have had access to these cenotes for thousands of years. In some cenotes, they've even found evidence of charred food and charcoal, suggesting that, well, a fire was lit by prehistoric inhabitants. In another case, a human skeleton was dated based on the age of the stalagmites that had formed on top of it. That body was found to be more than 13,000 years old, one of the oldest humans ever found in the Americas. The cenotes' connections to the jungle also bring a lot of life into these systems. While there's not many fish in the caves and caverns itself, there are a lot in the freshwater ponds that feed the entrances of many of these cenotes. I found them quite pretty. I'm normally a saltwater fish person myself, but I could see the beauty in a lot of these fish. And it's not just the fish. These underwater water lilies were just beautiful. Something out of a underwater Monet. I was so captivated by these lilies, I had to film them and make them the final shot of this episode. Well, that wraps us up. What did you think of the four elements? If you've been diving into cenote before, would you agree? Please do let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching this video. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please do me a favor and hit that like button or give me a subscribe. That way I'll know to make more videos like this in the future. The four main elements. That's three.